Hello, Yuvraj.
Hello. Namaste. Please mute yourself, sir. Oh, yeah, we are recording now. Distinguished speakers, Ambassador Mr. Deep Kumar Upadhyay, distinguished speaker, Ambassador Mr. K.V. Rajan, fellow participants and dear colleagues, a very good afternoon from the sunny day of Kathmandu. I hope you all are doing well in your both personal and professional life, maintaining the protocol against the corona pandemic. I am Yuvraj Solagai, the vice chairperson of organizing institution, Nepal Institute of International Relations. I will be moderating the session of today. Before the formal start of the webinar, let me say a few words about the organizing institution. Nepal Institute of International Relations, NIIR, is an independent non-governmental organization established in 2019 with the objectives of doing research and conducting regular discussion forums on international politics, diplomacy, and foreign relations, and to support government of Nepal to adopt necessary steps to make Nepal's foreign policy tangible to cope up with the changing environment of the world for the betterment of the country and the people. Since its formation, it has already organized 10 webinars, and the running one as 11th, if being counted. The present webinar has been organized to dig out the issues of basic problems and refer adequate solutions following the fluctuations of Nepal-India relations. Today, we will listen and interact with profound intellectuals and veteran diplomats from friendly India and Nepal as well about the undercurrents of Nepal-India relations. Our organization believes that the analysis of scholars present in this webinar shall be very fruitful. We will stay for around 2 hours with this webinar. Firstly, distinguished speakers will deliver their views on the topic for about an hour, and there will be question and answer session followed by the presentation. We request all the participants to drop the questions, if there are any, to the QA box or the chat box. Now, let me call upon Dr. Risiraj Adhikari to chair this webinar.
Thank you, Yuvraj. Welcome you all, distinguished participants and speakers. So nice to see you all. We'll have a very vibrant interaction session today. I request Yuvraj to carry on, please.
Thank you, Dr. Adhikari. Dr. Adhikari is the chairperson of the organizer NIIR. He served as the ambassador of Nepal to Malaysia before. He was the foreign affairs advisor to Prime Minister Prachanda and the executive director of Institute of Foreign Affairs IFA, Nepal's foreign policy think tank. Ladies and gentlemen, today, as you all already know, we have two special guests to talk on the topic. Firstly, I would like to welcome Mr. Deep Kumar Upadhyay. Welcome, Mr. Deep Kumar Upadhyay, to this webinar. Mr. Deep Kumar Upadhyay is a Nepali political leader and a diplomat. He is the former Minister for Culture, Tourism and Civil Aviation from 2004 June to 2005. He was the member of Nepali Legislature Parliament 3 times at 1991, 1993 and 2008 from Kapilvastu district. He is also the former ambassador of Nepal to India from 2015 to 2017. Ambassador Upadhyay is awarded with the Subhikhat Seva Gorkha Bahu Trust. He has been working as the member of Central Working Committee of Nepali Congress Party since 1999 to date. Mr. Upadhyay is active in different social organizations for the charity and welfare work. Similarly, we have a very special guest, being a tremendous experiences in diplomatic stadium, a well-known Indian diplomat to Nepal, Ambassador Mr. K.B. Rajan. Welcome, Ambassador Mr. Rajan, to this webinar. I hope you are listening me. It's a pleasure to have you here in this webinar. Ambassador Mr. K.B. Rajan is a former member of the Indian Foreign Service. Mr. Rajan served as India's ambassador to a number of countries, apart from occupying various important positions in the Ministry of External Affairs during more than 35 years of his diplomatic service. He served as an ambassador and head of mission in Nepal, the United Kingdom, Algeria, Zambia, and as permanent secretary at Ministry of External Affairs, India. Mr. Rajan also deputed to the India Trade Promotion Organization, ITPO, as chief executive. He was the Prime Minister's special envoy to OAU, Organization of African Unity Summit, and chairman of Iran-Pakistan India gas pipeline project as well. After retirement, he served as advisor to the Minister of External Affairs of India. Furthermore, he assumed the position of member of Oil Diplomacy Committee set up by Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, and headed several bodies such as NGOs, think tanks, and business chamber advisory bodies. Ambassador Rajan is now a chairman of Nepal-India Center at PSDCCI, New Delhi. Ambassador Rajan writes and lectures regularly on international affairs. He is the editor of a book, Ambassadors Club. Similarly, we would like to welcome you all the participants who represent the different strata of social life, from home to the foreign land, professors, research scholars, students, politicians, journalists, diplomats, and all of you for being here with us via Zoom. Please accept our warm greetings and sincere gratitudes to you all. The scholars, Nepal and India covered 74 consecutive years of formal diplomatic relations. In fact, 105 years if being counted from the British era. But they have multi-dimensional engagements from the unidentified time of ancient history. The relationship of Nepal and India is famous in its characters, as it is widely known as unique, the time-tested, and cemented by common heritage, culture, civilization, and geography. But nowadays, such relationship is in the position of diplomatic stalemate. Since India issued its new cartographic map in November 2019, mentioning the territory of Kalapani, Lipulek, and Limpiadura within the Indian occupation, and inaugurated the road from Darsula to Lipulek, Nepal formally objected to India through the diplomatic channels, but there were no serious response, according to the government of Nepal, from Indian side. Soon after, Nepal also included the disputed territory and approved the map by the parliament in her one in June 2020. We think there are four major issues as widely mentioned in Nepali political and diplomatic diaspora, that is rising with India to resolve and reformulate the relationship between two friendly nations. This may be the border issues, two trade and economic issues, three treaty issues, and four a kind of micromanagement issues in Nepal. India is a rising Asian giant with a high volume of gross national income, GNI, and demography. A basic concept of the world power is the balanced and positively influencing image in the neighbors for the regional cooperation, which seems serious lacking in the India's foreign policy. If India is not ready to overlook her policies towards the small neighbors and is not ready to cope up with the new challenges, this will certainly create hurdles for her to grow up as a world or even a regional power. The recent blockade posed by India to Nepal after the promulgation of the new constitution, India's attitude on the border issue, despite Nepal has a huge resource of the historic troops to claim the land, and the refusal of Prime Minister Modi to accept the report by the jointly organized EPG, Eminent Person Group's report, are some of the recent key features responsible to worsening the situation between two friendly countries. The Nepal Institute of International Relations would like the distinguished speakers to address the public queries like what factors deteriorated Nepal and India friend relationship? What is it expansionist attitude of India as legacy of British ruler or a big brotherly attitude toward smaller neighbors? What is the solution of border dispute between two friendly countries? Is India following Patel legacy of aggressive behavior by this government? What measures can be suggested to improve relations between these two countries? Should they discuss the entire gamut of relationship, including treaties and agreements to remove irritants as the historical legacy? The special relationship of open border and free movement of the people between Nepal and India is in brink of dismissal now onwards? Is the Kalapani, Lipulek, and Limpua-Dora dispute between the two countries getting strategic departure on the foreign policy and diplomacy of the two countries? Is the dispute normal, or this will change the history as it seems? What will be the cost and the effect of the dispute in the region? The Nepal Institute of International Relations is confident that the scholars would furnish answers to all the queries that certainly would satisfy the participant. Saying this all, let me now turn towards the distinguished speakers of this webinar. Firstly, Ambassador Mr. K.V. Rajan will deliver his presentation for 25 minutes. Ambassador Mr. Rajan, the floor is yours. Sir, you have to unmute. No, we are not. Yeah, we are not hearing you.
Unmute, please.
Sorry. Please wait. You can do yourself, sir.
I'll just see.
It's okay now.
No, I'm unmuted. I think you have to do it from your side.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you for that introduction. It's a great pleasure to be with the Institute and with my good friend, Ambassador Deep Kumar Upadhyay ji, to discuss this very important subject. We are meeting at a very important moment. It is also a very distressing moment for all of us. Many of us are at this meeting who have worked for and who believe in strong India-Nepal ties. I've read your concept note with interest, and it makes some very valid points. All I would suggest is that at this particular juncture in particular, it is very important for all of us to avoid any kind of simplistic narrative, particularly about the border issue. I think now is the time really for introspection on both sides, not to try and for either side to blame the other, because I find the perception in Nepal about this border dispute is very different from the perception in India. And it is therefore important that we try and tackle our relationship in general and this border problem in particular in a spirit of trust and goodwill, honesty, frankness, transparency, sensitivity, mutual accommodation, understanding, and objectivity. All these attributes are very, very important if we are going to reverse the present trend. And I think think tanks like yours have a particular responsibility, because in a sense, the border problem may well be beyond the governments by themselves to tackle. I think it is very important to fill in the gaps in the government level discussions, even as they try to resolve the issue by educating ourselves not only about the position of our respective countries, but about each other's positions. I find that the present tendency is for either country to be quite dismissive about the point of view of the other. And I think this should end. We should try and understand, why, for example, in India, we in India should try and understand why so many Nepalese are stressing the same point about the territorial issue. I find it very difficult to believe that every Nepalese intellectual, academic, diplomat, or media person who is strongly supporting Nepal's view is necessarily being destructively ultra-nationalistic or looking for short-term gains or doing something at the behest of another country. So I think India's responsibility certainly is to take Nepal's point of view seriously and with a sense of urgency and not dismiss it as something which is not, entitled to a serious and early discussion. Similarly, on the Nepalese side, I think the attempt to paint India as a hegemon, as being aggressive in the Sardar Patel mold, as the concept note suggests, or being a little cynical in doing some of the things that have happened in the recent past, may not be very fair to India, because a lot of things are happening in India which are not, very consciously sort of planned or deliberately designed in order to achieve certain short-term ends. For example, I find that just as the concept note in your paper makes a few suggestions about India's responsibility in the present status of relations between India and Nepal. Similarly, you will find that in India, everyone is saying that it is Nepal which is responsible, and that India has really no need to introspect. So this is just the first point that I wanted to stress, that if we want solutions, we need to guard against being too judgmental about each other, or making very sweeping oversimplifications. So let me first come to the initial point that has been made, which is, why are there so many hiccups, recurring hiccups, in India-Nepal ties? It is not that India has not meant well by Nepal, and I think, while it may be true that India was not able to completely shake off the British India legacy, it is difficult to underestimate the kind of goodwill that successive Indian governments and the Indian people at large have felt towards Nepal. And when I say successive governments, I'm starting right from the time of Nehru, who is described in the paper as someone who opted for a hegemonistic policy towards Nepal. I think on the contrary, Nehru went out of his way, and anyone who has read his writings or his letters to the chief ministers of Indian states, etc., will bear me out. What is it that Nehru did not want to do in order to promote Nepal's interests? Everything, the British had left Nepal in a desperately impoverished, undeveloped situation. It was under Nehru's prime ministership that India, assisted Nepal in having its first post office, its first roads, its first airports, bridges, etc., hospitals, etc., etc. And Nepal's entry into the UN, in fact, owed much to Nehru's determination to push that through in spite of resistance from the United States and other countries. Similarly, down the line, whether it is Nehru or Mrs. Gandhi or Rajiv Gandhi or Gujral with his Gujral doctrine, right down through Mr. Vajpayee and now with Mr. Modi, one cannot say that efforts have not been made to go the extra mile in trying to show our very special love and respect and consideration for Nepal. In spite of that, I think these hiccups have been recurring every now and then, particularly when the situation looks very promising and very positive in India-Nepal relations. I find something or the other suddenly happens, which is true in this case also, in the case of the border problem, because I thought that after the problems that we experienced in 2015, that there was definitely a course correction, and India was trying very hard to have development in the driver's seat of the bilateral relationship and not let security be the main driver. And yet again, we find that there is a major problem. So there are many factors which are responsible for this. Partly it is history, as I said. British India saw to it that there was an unequal relationship between what was then India and Nepal. And because of certain concerns and anxieties, and also perhaps other considerations such as the size of Nepal and its vulnerability, I will not deny that. Occasionally, India was a little inconsistent in its policy of total generosity and total unconditionality in terms of dealing with Nepal. And every now and then there has been a temptation, partly very often due to the anxiety of some Nepalese political players or the other, to intervene in Nepal's internal affairs. And sometimes the results have been very good. Sometimes they have backfired, as happened in the case of the constitutional amendment, which the Modi government thought was not in Nepal's interest, but went perhaps beyond the red line in trying to advise India on the eve of the promulgation of the constitution not to go ahead. So India may have been occasionally guilty of not showing enough sensitivity, not anticipating Nepal's sort of expectations enough, and also sometimes not correcting something it was trying to do before it was too late. But on Nepal's side also, I would beg to state, there has sometimes been an attempt to encourage short-term political calculations to trump longer-term national interests or mutual interests. So it really takes two sides to make or dilute a good relationship. And I think both the countries need to introspect as to why this keeps happening. The political instability which is part of the picture, the fact that sometimes there are governance issues which also come in the way, I think also should not be underestimated. And then of course, there is the China card, which was always there, lurking somewhere or the other. But in the last few years, it has become much more high profile, I would say. People used to say that Nepal plays the China card in order to attract India's attention or extract certain actions, decisions from India. But now I think even in Nepal, there is no denial of the fact that it is China itself which has often playing the China card very openly and getting involved in Nepal's internal affairs without, it seems, so much of resistance or controversy as has been there in the case of India. One of the things that I miss most about the India-Nepal relationship is the absence of an overarching vision for the kind of future that we want to see for our two countries and for our two peoples. Obviously, this kind of vision needs a kind, at least a rough cross-party consensus. But I think ours tends to be a very backward-looking relationship. Here we are with a COVID crisis on our hands, both our countries, much of the world, and many other pressing issues of accelerating inclusive economic development, etc., etc. But we are still talking about territorial boundaries which were dictated by either the East India Company or later the British India government more than 150 years back. We still talk about the 1950 treaty, which is a legacy of the British India times. And we are talking about Kala Pani and so on and so forth. So it seems as if we are living too much in the past, whereas we should really be learning from the past and making sure that we are building a much better, sustainable future. Coming to the border issue, I would say that in India, the perception is, I'm not saying that it is my perception necessarily, but there's a very widespread perception that in taking the decisions and actions that Nepal has in the last few days, instead of facilitating an early resolution of the issue through mutual discussion, dialogue, give and take, etc., the door is almost closing, if it is not already closed. In any case, I think India can be faulted for not taking Nepal's request for an urgent meeting sufficiently seriously, perhaps. What India was suggesting was, as soon as the COVID crisis is over, let us have the foreign secretary level talks, etc. But the decisions that have been taken are somewhat irreversible for Nepal. And I fear that even after the COVID crisis is over, the Kalapani issue and now the other territories to which Nepal has laid claim in its latest map will continue to fester. And the challenge for us is really to have a serious dialogue as quickly as possible, as soon as the atmosphere has improved. There is a minimum
Ambassador Rajan, sorry, we are not listening you. Hello?
etc.
Hello? Are you hearing me, sir? There might be some issues, maybe with your...
or through the inauguration of the road by the defense minister, which has been under construction for many years. So in India, the question that is being asked is why now? And what could Nepal hope to achieve by taking this very, very important and somewhat unprecedented step? But I'm sure the experts will start discussing this very soon. In the meantime, I would urge the think tanks, civil society as a whole, academic institutions, experts, to start exchanging ideas on all aspects of this border issue, because, as I said earlier, this problem may now be beyond the two governments themselves, only by themselves to settle, because the governments will take set positions. They will have a problem in departing from their set positions. It is really for public opinion in both countries, which should value the quality of the bilateral relationship above all things, to create an atmosphere, to create a more educated, informed opinion in the two countries, which will guide further discussions and hopefully a resolution of the Kalapani issue. There are many good things that have happened between India and Nepal in the last few days in various fields. Unfortunately, those have not been noticed sufficiently. And I think we should need to expand and diversify those good things. That is why in the PhD chamber, we have set up an India-Nepal center, because the idea is that the business communities in the two countries, instead of just waiting for the two governments to lead, should themselves take the initiative, cross-border initiatives, in order to promote and expand relations with the new Nepal. Let us plan for a Nepal-India relationship which is fit for the future, which the younger generation, particularly in the two countries, is waiting for, and not live too much in the past and allow ourselves to be dominated by the past. I will end with these few words, and I look forward to the discussion and the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Mr. Rajan, for your insightful and comprehensive deliberation. We will be back with some queries and comments for the question and answer session to you again. Thank you so much. Now we will move to Ambassador Mr. Deep Kumar Upadhyay. Now, Mr. Upadhyay, you will speak for 25 minutes. Please, the floor is yours. I guess you are muted. You have to be on mute, sir.
Yeah,
yes.
It is.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Thank you. Very good afternoon. Moderator Yatulagain, Chairperson DCG, my friend, distinguished, very seasoned career diplomat, and Mr. Rajan, all the participants. First of all, I would like to make my humble submission. I am so seasoned diplomat as our Mr. Rajan is. I am basically a social political worker, and it was my privilege to be in Delhi around for 2 years in an interval of 6 months for 2 times. That is by, I think, personal understanding, how I understand India, especially the relations between the countries. I would like to reflect my views upon that, I think, my knowledge. And at the time, both the tenure was very crucial one. First tenure, it was after the big earthquake, and the second tenure was at the time of the blockade. That's why it was a very, I think, a challenging time. And I'll just like to make a submission that this is the thing I have collected from all these, I think, the memories in Delhi. Especially, I would like to thank this institute to organizing this webinar and this crucial juncture with a very, very important, I think, subject. All of us know the relationship between Nepal and India is very unique because we are bound by our Vedas, Purans, myths, legends. All these are very common to both of the people of the country. We especially were very proud of our Rishi Munis. That's why we share our names and gotras by the same Rishi Munis, and the gods and goddesses also we share. It's very unique. We share our civilization, origin of knowledge, especially the Eastern philosophy. We belong I think this Himabharta Khanda we call, this Himalayan region is supposed to be the origin of the knowledge. That's why we share all this kind of a very proud history and civilization. We are linked by geography, which we can't change in any way. Provide waters from Himalayas to plains in North India is also very unique. And the records of interactions at people's levels since ages, it is the pride of our history. Regarding this political dimension, political developments in India do have impacts in neighborhood. When India was colonized, for example, Nepal had to fight for survival, tough fight to keep itself independent. And Nepal was never colonized. India's independence inspired wave of democracy here. Today, as India consolidates its democratic institutions, we neighborhood are doing the same. Share our fraternity of the two democracies. It is also a very bright history of both the countries. And especially, we have open border, which eases the movement of people and in the meantime has posed challenges in ensuring the open border to be not misused by mischievous elements. For this, we have our Peace and Friendship Treaty of 1950, that is the key provision between us. Some of them burdensome for a small country like ours. Some never came into operation, hence rational for review. This is the main thing we have to consider for this 21st century. I think a new look for our relationship. International boundary, especially 4 stages of boundary management: definition, delineation, mapping, demarcation, and administration. Scientific mapping done jointly between 1981 to 2007. The technical team agri-strip maps were prepared and signed at survey DG level. Mapping had to be done in 2 pockets, which could not happen due to absence of base map or any other basis agreeable to both sides. Survey field works have continued in areas where mapping is complete. These ongoing works include boundary pillar repair and construction, preparing inventory of encroachment of no man's land, and cross-border holding, preparing GPS coordinates of boundary pillars. Political will required to reserve the remaining boundary alignment in Kalapani and Susta areas, which is agreed upon by both the countries in our Foreign Ministry protocol. India needs to be forthcoming to address the issue to mutual satisfaction. Regarding economic dimension also, India is Nepal's largest trading partner, no doubt. Nepal is India's 19th biggest export destination. Major transit country, bilateral treaty of transit, which is comprehensive. 15 routes specified for third country transit and more such routes for bilateral trade. Port facilities, railway connection, previously only with Haldia Kolkata port, now at Visakhapatnam also. Major source of FDI, a number of Indian multinational companies, number of industries, around 770. Job creation around 7,000. FDI around 93 billion from Indian side. Bilateral trade growing annually. Trade with India in percentage now is around 64%. But huge trade imbalance in Nepal's main concern we have. In 2018, export to India, Nepali rupees 46 billion. Import from India, Nepali rupees 633 billion. Import nearly 13 times more than export. Bilateral trade treaty needs revisions to incorporate more liberal provisions for Nepal. As we accept all the Indian goods in Nepali market, mostly, in the reciprocal basis, Nepal also needs to have a good access of the Nepali productions to the Indian market, which my distinguished speaker, Mr. Rajan, also mentioned. It is initiated by the private sector also. It is a very, I think, hopeful scenario in the coming future I see from both the sides. Development cooperation, that is 60 years history, various sectors, especially health, education, infrastructure, hydropower, culture, and other sectors. Two-way flow of remittances. Good number of Nepalese work in India. Vice versa, good number of Indians also work in Nepal. Nepal among 7 top remittance providers for India. India's economy impacts Nepal currency. That's why our currency is pegged with Indian currency. Connectivity also has a very significant role. Road connectivity is getting better on both sides. Few bottlenecks remain at border linking roads. One cross-border railway is complete, one near to complete. 3 more planned study done for Kathmandu Raksol railway. Next step would be DPR and its implementation. Integrated checkpost being built, one complete in Birganj and one almost complete in Biratnagar, to ease movement of goods and people. Inland waterways, new agenda of Nepal-India connectivity. Air connection between major cities, more such connections possible in view of new airports in Nepal. Air routes agenda is very, very important for Nepal. Regarding connectivity, power trade and transmission infrastructure is also very, very crucial. And the development for this power trade, I think it is going ahead. It is a very good, significant, I think, aspect for Nepal. Especially the petroleum pipeline is a major successful project between the two countries. Now, there is no hassles for the petroleum supply in Nepal. And especially, I'm from Tarai also. That's why the price index of Nepal is better than price index of India. It's a very, very unique thing, especially the people in the neighboring side of India, especially UP and Bihar. They're amazing, oh, all the petroleum products are going from India, and how in Nepal it is almost about 25 to 30 Nepali rupee cheaper than India. How it is happening? It's a very big question for the people here. Especially, water resources is a major, I think, agenda of Nepal, especially important sector of engagement, which has quite a long history, especially Kosi Agreement, Gandak Agreement, and Mahakali Treaty are the major ones. Prevailing view that agreements in Kosi and Gandak and the execution have not been as fair as this should have been, because as per the agreement, still now, the problems of the Kosi and the problems of the Gandak has not been resolved. There is a very big question of the compensation of the farmers caused by flood, inundation, etc., etc. And I think both the governments, especially Nepal, is trying to pursue it, but from the government of India side, especially, it comes under domain of the somewhere in UP and somewhere in Bihar. It is not so, I think, aspiring as per the wish of the Nepali people. Every year, there is flood, there is problem. And as per the agreement, the Nepali farmers are not getting sufficient the water as per the agreement. There is some technical problem also. And until unless government of India responds all these things, the people of Nepal, especially of the Tarai region, cannot be happy with the works of the government of India. In the same way, Mahakali Treaty was a very, very priority project between both the countries, because prevailing view the agreements which was based on the principle of equal sharing of water, implementation of stock due to delay in finalizing DPR of Pancheshwar. These are the main, I think, the things you have to look upon, especially the hydropower sector. Arun 3, most significant is the example of India's investment in Nepal's hydropower, and it is good that it is making good progress. Especially security dimension is also a major one. Especially around 50,000 Gorkha Nepali youths as Gorkha regiment are serving in different sectors of Indian security. It is a unique aspect of our relationship. close cooperation between security agencies of the two countries. It's a major, I think, a very good thing. Committed not to permit any misuse of open border, regular patrolling from both sides, as well as APF from Nepal side and SSP from Indian side. They beg joint patrolling. This is a very, I think, till to date, there are some exceptions, but I think the understanding is good. Traditional relations between army chiefs, armies occurred. Honorary general, this is very, very unique relationship between the two, I think, the countries. Foreign Ministry led mechanism for military cooperation and joint military exercise ongoing for past several years. Insert, relations are comprehensive and cover every sector of engagement, almost 3 dozen active bilateral mechanisms ranging from water resources to trade, transit, security to culture and tourism. In the same way, engagements between bilateral fellow members of BBIN, SAARC and BIMSTEC, these are on, and common views on many issues at UN, WTO and other international forums also are very, I think, unique. Frequency of high-level visits higher than many other bilateral relations are on. Friend in need is a friend in need. Extraordinary closeness reflected in the prompt delivery of support and assistance during difficult time of earthquakes. Has the relation been problem-free? I'd like to say no. No secret that there have been ups and downs, certain hiccups between the two countries. Difficult moments have been witnessed. That is 2015 situation, current boundary dispute, we can remember. Still, we are neighbors destined to remain friends, and there is no alternative to harmonious and cooperative relations. Could we have done better in the relations? I like to say, of course, yes. Why did it take us a decade to realize that better connectivity is a must? Better roads, railways, airways, waterways, transmission, better late than never. That's why works have started in positive direction. Why did we keep the boundary issue alive for decades and are not ready to address them even now? Realization about better implementation of the past agreements, joint oversight mechanism, regular follow-up at foreign secretary level, bilateral undertakings are getting better speed, implementation enhances credibility, momentum has slowed down to some extent due to COVID-19 and the boundary dispute. What next? It is I think the compulsion of both the nations to build trust and confidence. We have our own sensitivities, maybe different for a big, rising world power and a small neighbor over 20 times smaller in land and size, but need to respect each other's sentiments, especially Nepal's sensitivity, sense of never being colonized, do not want patronization, want early resolution on boundary, review of some of the past treaty arrangements, unhindered transit, more facilitative trade arrangements. India's apparent sensitivities, global ambitions, security concerns do not undermine each other's sensitivities and do not hurt sentiments, negotiations, public speech, media, representative. Never do things that harm people and leave negative impacts for years to come. How we can enhance channel of engagements at various levels, including the level of leadership. Resolve the issue of treaty review. EPG inputs could be useful. Review old deals on Kosi and Gandak to assure fair treatment. Finalize Manchester DPR early. That would pave way for implementation of the project and Mahakali Treaty. Resolve remaining boundary mapping is a major issue. Clear, visible, uncontested, well-defined encroachment, free boundary line will help end occasional brawls of the border and contribute to overall positive favor of bilateral relations. If the complexity of India-Bangladesh boundary can be resolved, why not resolution of Nepal? It's a very, very burning question among the people of Nepal. Future lies in more meaningful and mutually beneficial economic partnership. We have to focus on economic agendas too. And water resources could be a boon for both if properly utilized. Reservoirs to be built upstream, both sides will benefit in terms of power generation, flood control, waterways, and availability of the flow of water in lean season. And we have to forget, this century is the century of the drinking water. That's why now we have not been able to properly manage the optimum utilization of the water. That's why the rivers of Nepal has been, I think, a sorrow. Likewise, the people of, especially the neighboring UP and Bihar, they also, I think, facing the same fate. They also feel now it is the rivers are sorrow. If we can manage according to international law, I think the proven technology can be used according to international law and our mutual benefit, mutual agreement, then the scenario may be changed. This sorrow of the river, immediately it will be changed for a boon for both the countries. And I think we have to work for that. Otherwise, any kind of obstruction of the natural flow of the water from north to south in any name, in the name of the embankment, in the name of the road, against the international law, against the approval or concurrence of the Nepal government, it will not be beneficial for the people of, especially the UP and Bihar. If there will be big, the big fall of the water, then especially the damage in India maybe many times be bigger in India than Nepal. That's why all these things should be considered for the new, dimensions. Especially, framework needs to be agreed on cost and benefit sharing and implementation. All these, utilize the waters should be on the international, approved formula. Address past grievances related to compensation issues and quotient conduct also should be successful. That will help to make a very positive attitude for the Nepali farmers. Especially power trade agreement was a positive undertaking. Now, open market access to power sellers, developers, at least within BBIN countries, we are very much hopeful for the success of this, the initiations. Regarding investment, should be encouraged. India has natural advantage to invest in Nepal to benefit from India's progress. If a prosperous Nepal, the help to the sovereignty of the India, the security of the India, and I think this is the crucial factor India has to think about. Just I'm finishing. Trade imbalance must be addressed. Expedite work of robust connectivity, especially both hard connectivity, physical soft connectivity, hassle-free border administration and security, innocent people, respectful behavior, augment the vital roads linking border points. These are the things, especially now in the conclusion, we have to ensure timely delivery of the results and implementation of the projects. This is the very, very, crucial thing, the area between Nepal and India. And the policy level, there is no hesitation in the policy level. And regarding the implementation of the projects, there should be, there is a mechanism between the Nepal, Indian ambassador to Nepal and our foreign secretary. It's a very good mechanism. They should be active, and the policy level should, monitor all these things, especially for public outreach and educating on both sides, encouraging think tanks and more about each other's countries and misunderstandings, time of understandings and information of the reality on the other side of the border. Be guided by the vision of the enhance our relations to neighbor heights, communist realities of the 21st century vision to erect a strong edifice of trust so that relations always remain harmonious. Vision to create a model relationship which makes not only us but our posterity equality proud of our accomplishments. And on final concluding words, I would like to request both the governments, because the relationship between Nepal and India, it is bound by the relationship between people to people. The governments, these are temporary ones. That's why both the governments have not to waste the time and come ahead for the fruitful bilateral dialogue. That's the mainly way, especially the boundary disputes. We have to keep our, I think, anything, the proofs on the table, and we have to come to a conclusion. And if there is a will, there is the way. The political will, the political I think the willingness is the time moment, and I'm hopeful. Prime Minister Modi, he is a very, very active, I think, diplomat, statesman in the social media. Regarding Nepal issue, from the blockade time, I have never seen any kind of his, I think, the observations in the social media, neither of his words on his speech. That's why I hope the time has come, both the leaderships should forget I think, the hiccups and come forward. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Ambassador Upadhyaya, for your insightful and very comprehensive deliberation on the topic. Now, without further delay, we will go to the question and answer session. And firstly, I have a question to both of you. Maybe Ambassador Upadhyaya will first respond, and then we will go to Ambassador Rajan. And then after, we will take the questions from participants that has been dropped in the chat box here. Ambassador Upadhyaya, do you agree that Nepal and India are at the lowest point of the relationship today? And as an experienced diplomat and a Nepali politician, what do you think the path ahead? I think so. You are muted. Let me just check you. Just try to unmute yourself.
Are you getting me?
Yes. Now you can.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I think in diplomacy, we shouldn't think like this. We shouldn't think it is on the lowest level. We have mentioned both Mr. Rajan and me. There are hiccups, there are up and downs. I think the pace is low now. That's both the leadership has to acknowledge the problem, and they must be, I think, willing to make a strong vision, belief to break through all these kind of, I think, the problems in the history. In the blockade time, I would like to commemorate Sushmaji. Once I make, I think, a kind of some my personal opinions with her, sharing opinions, how it happened. Then she told me she was a very, very, I think, a very pious person, very, I think, optimistic. Deepji, look, sometimes bad dreams come. We are neighbors, just as in a family. That's why we should forget that. That's why we should not take it as a lowest pace in our diplomacy. We have to, I think, no other way to improve it, to resolve it. That's form But the leadership must realize the problem. If we will not resolve it soon, then the many kind of problem, many kind of, I think, daily problems may aggravate. We should be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador, Mr. Rajan, would you like to respond to the question? Hello? I guess you have to unmute. We are not getting you. So we are not getting you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
I think it is very complicated. There have been many hiccups in the past, but this one is a little different because, Nepal as a country has taken a decision which has been endorsed through a constitutional amendment, and these things are very difficult to reverse, even if there is agreement in the bilateral talks through a mutual give and take. So the two governments have taken set position. India thinks it has a very, very strong case. So it seems as Nepal. And Nepal has also now taken the step of making it into law. The boundary that it considers to be its rightful boundary. So I think it will take a lot of innovative leadership, bold leadership, and also a lot of civil society support, so that neither country appears to have lost or won at the end of this discussion. I think both countries should feel that it is a win-win situation in the spirit of their age-old relationship, the open border, the cultural, historical, and other ties. Indian government or the British, the East India Company could do to damage. So I think we need to work very, very hard, but should not underestimate the difficulty in finding an early solution. So I would say, in a sense, that this is a somewhat unprecedented low in the graph of India-Nepal relations, which has gone up and down every now and then. In the last few years, I think the downs have been rather longer in terms of their life than it used to be in the past because of various factors. But this one, I think, might be quite complicated, and it will need a lot of effort and a lot of maturity and statesmanship to resolve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, both the speakers. Now we'll take the questions from the participants of this webinar. And certainly there are many questions, and most of the questions go to Ambassador Mr. Rajan. Maybe Nepali audience want to hear more from our Indian friends. So this is the first question, Mr. Rajan, maybe you are hearing me, right?
Yes.
From the very beginning, the India-Nepal relations remained more or less peaceful. But after the power of PM Modi, the steps of intervention of for amendment of constitution. Let me repeat this again. After the power of PM Modi, the steps of intervention for amendment of constitution, unannounced blockade, and the again border issue, one after another, haven't they been the signs of hegemony, aggression, and unfriendly steps of India? This is one question to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, sir, please. You have to. This is the question to you.
Well, as I said earlier, we should avoid any kind of judgmental approach to a problem which is a legacy of history. Let us not forget that soon after becoming Prime Minister, Mr. Modi was the first Prime Minister to visit Nepal after a long, very long gap. Dr. Manmohan Singh had not been able to visit it at all. And his first visit was extremely successful and received universal applause and praise from across the political spectrum, the media, and the general public. What happened subsequently was undoubtedly a bit of a misjudgment, I think, personally, on India's part. The intention may have been good in terms of requesting Nepal to consider the implications of passing the constitution in the form that it had been approved. But I think the sensitivities of Nepal as a sovereign independent country deserved a little more circumspection and caution on the part of India instead of making a public display of its advice to a sovereign government. And then after that, the widespread perception in Nepal that somehow India was acquiescing in the disruption of essential supplies to Nepal. It's debatable whether India could have done much to prevent this disruption, but the general feeling certainly in Nepal, and it has to be acknowledged and taken seriously, was that the government of India could have acted in order to save so much of distress in Nepal among many ordinary people because of the shortages of even essential commodities. But since then, the impression, even in Nepal, I think, is that Mr. Modi has been trying extremely hard to build bridges with Nepal, build a personal rapport with the Prime Minister. They have been in touch on many occasions. And as I said earlier, the emphasis has shifted to economic development as a top priority in India-Nepal relations. And a lot of good things have happened in infrastructure, in railways, for example, the oil pipeline, which Ambassador Kadia referred to. A lot of good things are happening. And the general impression was that relations were back to normal and in fact better than normal when all of a sudden this border problem erupted. Where I think we should be a little careful is to assume that Mr. Modi created this kind of provocation in order to deliberately create a problem with Nepal or send a kind of a signal to Nepal. On the contrary, I think the impression in Delhi is that there was nothing new in either the external boundary of India, which has not changed, or this road, which is intended to facilitate the journey of pilgrims to Kailash Mansarovar. They have been going there by this route for many years. There's an agreement between India and China going back to 1954, which has been renewed subsequently for trade and public traffic on this particular route. The only thing that happened was that there was a proper road which was constructed over a period of many years. It was started during Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, not by Mr. Modi. All that happened was the road is nearly complete. And it means a lot to pilgrims who go to Kailash Mansarovar. And the defense minister thought that would be a good idea to go in for a virtual inauguration of this route. So this was not a provocation. It was not intended as a signal or a provocation to Nepal. And I would urge my friend in Nepal not to jump to the conclusion that Mr. Modi is being aggressive or somehow trying to pressurize Nepal in any way in this direction. On the contrary, I think India attaches the highest importance to relations with Nepal. The spokesman in the External Affairs Ministry has made it clear that there is a mechanism which is available to sort out the remaining very little that remains of the boundary demarcation problem. And I'm sure that, with goodwill on both sides, this also will be sorted out. But it is certainly not an intentional act on the part of Mr. Modi to somehow provoke Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And there is another question to you, Ambassador Mr. Rajan. Recently, Indian Foreign Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar said that India is not in non-alignment policy. Is India officially abandoning the policy of non-alignment now? What that will mean to the region South Asia?
I'm not sure if Mr. Jaishankar has said that we have abandoned or left the policy of non-alignment. It's just that earlier on, the definition of non-alignment was to be non-aligned between the United States and the then Soviet Union. Now, I think what Mr. Jaishankar is suggesting is that in the new world which is evolving, you have a number of poles. It's a multipolar world because, as we know, the US remains the strongest power in the world, but its power is slowly on the decline. China is emerging as a major power. But then there are a number of other countries which are also becoming more and more influential in the world. So what Mr. Jaishankar, I think, was suggesting is that the classic notion of non-alignment, that, for example, we should be non-aligned between the US and China, does not hold anymore. We have to have good relations with the US, we have to have good relations with China, we have to have good relations with the EU, with Japan, with the ASEAN countries, etc., etc. So it means we are going to develop relations with the different poles in the New World Order according to our assessment of our complementarities and the mutual advantage that could flow from better relations with them. So I think the idea is not to say that we are abandoning non-alignment and becoming aligned to one country or the other. In fact, what Professor Jaishankar has also said is that the US must understand that there is a new significance in the word alliance. They have always had a conventional idea of alliances. That idea should change. And what the US should also be doing is to have, close, friendly, cooperative relations with a number of countries, but not the kind of rigid alliances which made one bloc an adversary of the other. Thank
you. Thank you, Ambassador Mr. Rajan. I think there are another question that goes to you. It also goes to you. Yes, it's to you. We know the just I guess I have. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is the question to you, Ambassador Rajan. It seems that Indian foreign policy has been changing constantly, and it has more strategic orientation than in the past now. Will you please share how far it has been changing in regard to Nepal's, India's Nepal policy?
No, I would disagree with the suggestion that Indian foreign policy has been changing constantly. On the contrary, Indian foreign policy has generally enjoyed a cross-party consensus, whether it was during the Cold War or afterwards. Of course, in any vibrant democracy, the opposition always raises its voice and asks a lot of inconvenient questions, and the government is forced to defend its policy. But India's policy actually has a certain continuity and a certain constancy, and that remains. As far as Nepal is concerned, I personally think that the policy has been very clear, that of being a particularly good neighbor of Nepal, being a friend of Nepal, both in good times and in difficult times, because we attach a special value to our relations with Nepal, and that continues. What sometimes happens is that the style in which certain decisions are implemented attracts the wrong kind of attention in Nepal. One example was during the constitutional amendment, development. But there have been other times when maybe Nepal did not like or misinterpreted or misunderstood something that India was suggesting. Today, there is absolutely no difference. India has, in fact, a policy of neighborhood first, which Mr. Modi had announced when he became Prime Minister. That is to give the highest priority to our neighbors. And that is the reason why he visited Nepal. He attaches particular importance to Nepal. But what has happened is that certain developments have taken place which perhaps required India to be extra careful about Nepalese sensitivities. For example, when this road...
Mr. Rajan, your video is off now. Can you please check? We are not seeing
you. Just 1 minute. For example, when the road was inaugurated, I don't think India imagined that Nepal would sort of be taken by surprise and would take it as a kind of provocation to bring out its own map, etc. And that is a shortcoming on the part of maybe bureaucrats in India who could have anticipated this, because there is nothing new in Nepal's claim on Kalapani, etc. It was not intended that way, but sometimes the style is such, sometimes people say certain things without intending to cause hurt, but they do cause misunderstanding. No, I think our Nepalese friends can rest assured that if anything, Mr. Modi desires even stronger relations with Nepal. And I think in the months and years to come, this will become very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will turn to Ambassador Upadhyay. We will take 3 questions for him. I guess Ambassador Upadhyay is hearing me now. Ambassador Upadhyay, what would you do in a different way if you were again ambassador to India in a current situation? What will be your priorities? How would you prioritize your tasks and activities? This is one, so please be brief. Hello? Oh, no, we are not getting you, sir. You have to unmute. Yes.
Can I respond this first? Okay.
Yeah, please. A bit hypothetical, so be brief, please.
Look, this is when I resigned from the post and came back here on my profession, that is the social political life. With it. But I want to share one thing. At the time of I think the blockade, At that time, the relationship was strained and the difficulties were more than this time, because at that time, one of our major political party, they were saying, we are making this blockage in our border, especially. That a very unique character of the problems at the time. And there was, I think, were on the verge of this formulation of this new constitution, and there was, I think, the special kind of the government, and I think the speeches of our leaders, especially the ministers, deputy prime ministers, was, I think, a very, very, I think, very disgusting for the government of India side. That was a very difficult time for me. And at that time, but I was so privileged to get access to the foreign minister, to the prime minister office, to the senior cabinet ministers, everywhere, to the, I think, the advisor, secretary advisor, Mr. Doval Saab. At that time, that was a privilege. But now I think why both the governments are not making this kind of, I think, the searching for the solution of the problems. When there is a problem, there is a solution also. Both the countries, we are based on this Eastern philosophy, and that is the basic of the philosophy. If there is problem, there is solution also. But now I think why the government are so shy and why the government are so being unwilling to make all this kind of, I think, the efforts. This is first thing I would like to say. Otherwise, the way the Indian media was so aggressive regarding Nepal case, I faced a lot at the time. And I was, I think, very much open to Indian media also at the time, because when the new constitution we promulgated, it took about 3 months to get the English version of that constitution copy. Till that date, it was very, very difficult. Very many kind of, I think, nonsense rumors were there, and the media, I think, especially the quoting were there. We faced that. But now, I am quite hopeful. The media is so quiet. And the only thing, the willingness of both the governments, especially the willingness of our Prime Minister and willingness of our Prime Minister Modi, that is the very, very crucial thing. They have to realize the dispute, regarding the dispute, the major dispute is the origin of the Mahakali River. This is the one thing. And the technical persons can resolve it when we sit in the dialogue. We can, I think, go through all the, everything, every proofs we have from both the sides, then we can decide on that, which may be the origin of the Mahakali River, first thing. Second thing is which is the tri-junction between Nepal, India, and China. We say Limpudora. India is saying, no, that is the tri-junction. It is, I think, Lipu Lake. These are the main things. It can be resolved. That's why I need some kind of, I think, in diplomacy, there are, I think, many, I think, tiers of the intercourse is there. Track 1, track 2, track 3, all kinds of processes. But it is due to the lockdown, this problem, I agree. And I will thank to you for this webinar. This is the way we can, I think, make some kind of, I think, looseness to resolve this crisis. That's why the first thing, Nepali people and the Indian people, they are so much, have a very, very good heart-to-heart tradition that cannot be separated or damaged by any government. This is the first thing. Second thing, especially the great leaders who contributed in the independence of India, freedom fighting of India, especially our youths who are still contributing for the sovereignty, for the, I think, they are sacrificing their lives too. Second thing. And the third thing, the management of the water. We can't change the boundary. We can't change the geography. Management of water is the major issue. And other issues, we have no problem. All the mechanisms are I have already spoken. That's why this is up to the level of the, I think, the top policy level to decide and to make an harmonious environment, just to make it, I think, easy, because the standard format is after this COVID crisis, we'll again sit together and make some more bilateral dialogues. We are seeing when there is priority with the government of India, there is no bar of this COVID crisis, especially relating the China boundary issues, dispute issues, and other major issues also. Things are going on. That's why in the mindset of the leadership of the government of India, the relationship with Nepal means the relationship governed by our cultural, social, religious feelings of Nepali people. It should not be damaged. That's why no matter who may be the persons, but the will of the leadership is the most I think, deciding factor for the implementation. That I would like to share for this.
Thank you. Thank you. Similarly, there is another question to you. Mr. Upadhyay, thank you for addressing water resource issues between Nepal and India. However, during the recent past, huge and long barriers along the south border of Nepal have been constructed by India to stop natural water flow during the rainy season. Is it, do you think, a friendly step of a good neighbor? What is your assessment on this prime issue?
Thank you for this good question. Are you getting me?
Sorry,
Are you getting me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's clear.
In my speech also, I had mentioned we cannot obstruct the water flowing from north to south. And water, especially drinking water, is a special feature of this 21st century. I have seen in India, the water table is getting so low. I personally witnessed the supply of drinking water for the people, especially in the some areas in the Maharashtra and some in the Gujarat region, transporting by the railways. That was so much havoc was there. In the same way, in Nepal also, the water table is getting down. That's why overall the water management system should be considered in priority by both the countries. Otherwise, now what government of India is doing, it is against the international law, internationally approved all kind of treaties and other agreements, and against the concurrence of Nepal. When I was in Delhi office serving Nepal, it was a very, I think, surprising question for Prime Minister Modi. When I briefed Mr. Nipendra Mishra, the Chief Secretary Advisor of Prime Minister Modi, Nepal government has no concurrence approval for all these kind of a border, maybe embankment, maybe roads, against the international law and treaties. Is this fair for a country, friendly country like Nepal, which you say it is sovereign country? Then I think he conveyed it to the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister Modi was, is there no any concurrence from Nepal government? It was a big question at the time in MEA. But I think that question is, I think, held up now. Nepal always should raise this question with government of India and should be ready to manage the water and in the favor of the Nepali and Indian farmers, along with this Nepali Tarai and UP and Bihar, I think the bordering areas. Otherwise, again, I would like to say, now these rivers are sorrows of both the countries. If we will make this full utilization of the water according to the proven technology, then definitely it may be a boon. And our whole this Chure region, the Rai region, will be get benefit and fruitful eventually for the UP and Bihar connecting areas also. Otherwise, every year we have to face the loss of the lives and about billions of rupees for the management, for the crisis of the regarding its inundation, this flood, etc., etc. That's why it's a very, very good question. We have just to make this approach, now the Indian approach, trying to bar natural flow of water despite the Nepali concurrence. That is the main problem with the Nepali people for the Indian attitude also. And this should be admitted in the technical level also. We can discuss and make the fruitful result for both the countries. We should go for that. There is technology. There is, I think, the ways we can change the whole scenario of both the, I think, the adjoining areas. Otherwise, the same history may recur. And if there is any big flood, any big water flow, then the damage in Nepal may be lesser. The damage in India may be very, very big way. It may be damaged. You cannot obstruct the natural flow of the water in any way. This year, it is, I think it is supposed to be the big, I think, rainfall in this 30 years of tenure. This year, it is supposed to be the biggest one. That's why these are the things we have to consider, and government of India should, I think, be acknowledge one thing: the self-pride of sovereignty of the Nepalese people is high, and Prime Minister Modi knows it very well. He, I think, quote, has said many times, Nepali people are so self-pride, they cannot bow down. Never they will bow down. Then why this kind of activities is going on? The government of India should be serious and try to resolve all these kind of, I think, the issues, especially the Kosi flood. I think the compensation issues, Gandak issues, about 6,000 hectares of the land, and that was never touched. Only now, after the Nepal took this issue, then DPR, I think it is almost ready, and government of India will, I think, go for that 6,000 hectares of land for this Gandak area. And according to the agreement, Nepali farmers are not getting the approved water supply also. These are the areas. That's why we have been very much, I think, feeling very sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Upadhyay. I request the speakers to be more brief, because we are just running out of time and there are many questions. We want all the questions to be addressed. And there is another question, maybe the last for this round. We will come back to you again after the address by Mr. Rajan. What is your, Mr. Upadhyay, what is your comments on the rumors in India that Nepal is tilted towards China in the recent days? Do you see third-party role in the current crisis in the relationship between Nepal and India?
Thank you for the good question also.
Yeah, did you
I was during Delhi. This was a very, are you getting me?
Yeah. We are hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a very, I think, the permanent question of Indian media to Nepal. At the time, I tried to convince my media friends in there, look, when Prime Minister Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, he was the person to, I think, to make a special request to the Chinese companies to come to Gujarat and invest, and the story starts. And now the involvement of the Chinese, I think, investors are throughout India, and the trade, I think, engagement is also, I think, it is so huge. That's why it is you which you are tilting to China. That's why, being a small country, you see, the terrain of Nepal towards south, towards India, is so easy, so common regarding the terrain of Tibetan Plateau. We have to across 15,000 feet in any way to go through Tibetan Plateau. In winter, 2 to 3 feet of, I think, the snowfalls. In the summer, there is mountain shift, not any kind of a landslide. This is the major geographic difficulties we have to understand. That's why Indian people, Indian media should be very much, they have to very much serious, to be honest with themselves. Nepal being a small country, when you make any kind of, I think, a special push to the end, then obviously we have to look anywhere. When it was time of this blockade, some time of a supply came from, I think, the Tibet side, and that was just a gesture, you see. 1 load of tanker, 2 loads of tanker, that is nothing, that means nothing. In the same way, the supply system of Nepal, we need 365 days of supply, and it is only compatible to your border. That's why you should be very much clear that Nepal geography never permits us to tilt with the north. But if you push you up to the wall, then definitely. And in funny, I always trying to quote, you see, the Chinese cars are very, very quality, better quality and cheaper. That's why we play Chinese cars. That is the only thing we do. Otherwise, we are trying to follow your policies. Because, you know, China is the only country which has a surplus fund. They are very good now in technology also. That's why we'll try to use the technology, try to use the surplus fund. But I think the better option or better chances is try to involve Indo-Nepal any kind of a water management system projects. Try to involve Chinese fund. Try to involve Chinese fund for the fertilizer factory, because we have now petroleum pipeline. If we have natural gas pipeline, plenty of natural gas, then we can optimally utilize our power generation. Then we can make fertilizers, which is, I think, India, government of India also imports from the third world. These are the things we can think and go together. But the main thing is the trust and the confidence of the leadership. It is the need of the time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Upadhyay. Now we will go to with 3 questions to Ambassador Rajan. And I again request to be brief, please. I guess Ambassador Mr. Rajan maybe hearing me. Now, we know the relations between Nepal and India is of multiple layer and type of multi-dimension, but the issues of blockade, border claiming, issues of blockade, border claiming India, birthplace of Buddha, unequal treaty and agreement, political micromanagement by India in Nepal are rising in unhappy situations. Why these things happen, and what are the 4 ways to overcome the issues? What is the lagging to solve these issues? This is one question.
Thank you. You know, the multidimensional nature of our relationship with Nepal is something which is very, very precious to both countries, to the people of both countries. And it precedes by several centuries the unequal relationship which actually the British invented through the East India Company, and then it was sanctified by the British Indian government. After India became independent, it was at Nepal's request that the 1950 treaty was kept alive in its new form, And it is true that every now and then there may have been an aberration on the part of India in terms of what we refer to as the micro management of internal affairs in Nepal, which in a sense is also a product of the sheer proximity that the two countries have, and the fact that, you know, sometimes a request is made by one stakeholder or the other in Nepal who feels that with India's support, he or she stands a better chance. Over the years, I think India has reduced its temptation to respond even to such requests when they are made. And it is only very, very rarely that India takes the initiative to get involved in Nepal's internal affairs. One such unfortunate example was when the constitution was about to be promulgated. I've already acknowledged that. I think the answer to a relationship which will respond more adequately to today's world, what India is today, what Nepal is today, what the younger generation in both countries look forward to in terms of relations for the future. The answer is really to restructure the India-Nepal relationship and get away from the British India model or mindset completely. And now I think Nepal is a very, very different country from what it was like in the late 40s and 50s, or even in the decades, subsequent decades. Now I think India and Nepal are both ready for a totally different kind of relationship. I had said even, I think some 20 years back in an article in Hindu entitled, "Should the 1950 treaty be scrapped?" question mark. And it surprised many of my Indian friends a lot. But my answer was yes, it should be scrapped because it is an unequal relationship. In a sense, it requires Nepal to dilute its sovereignty in exchange for some economic benefits of India. And I said that while, you know, in a different autocratic system, absolute monarchy, etc., that kind of relationship is sustainable. With a multi-party democracy in Nepal, multi-party democracy in India, free press, free aspirations, that kind of relationship is very anachronistic and should be ended. And we should think of other ways in which, you know, the core concerns of India in terms of security and the core interests of Nepal in terms of economic development can be safeguarded. It is not necessary to trade one off against the other. And I've written in that article that India, as a larger country, should not insist on reciprocity if the 1950 treaty is replaced. It should be generous, and it should make sure that Nepal doesn't lose out, you know, just because the 1950 treaty is it's too late, and it is totally unnecessary and uncalled for. After all, you have some 30 million Nepalese who probably work in India, so many Indians who work in Nepal. So all these things cannot be reversed, should not be reversed. Things like the open border, the pegging of the Nepalese currency to Indian currency, these are things which actually are in the interest of both countries, and they are certainly in the interest of Nepal, because there is currency stability for Nepal's currency also. So when the time comes to review these, they can be reviewed. But I think we should restructure the entire relationship, and Nepal should have that sense of equality and mutual respect, which is absolutely essential. And if I was a Nepali, I would feel very uncomfortable with something like the 1950. So I would say we should restructure the relationship, let there be a public debate, let the think tanks come in, let the NGOs come in, and then I think the governments can really think of restructuring the treaty, either component by component or in a wholesale way, whatever the two countries want. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Mr. Rajan. There is another one question, maybe that's of similar type. Ambassador, you can escape the question if you don't like to respond it. It's upon you. This is another one question. Many people in Nepal believe that Nepal is treated by India as she herself was treated by British before. Is there any realization to the Indian political and diplomatic level that Nepal is not a country which was created by British Parliament? Why Nepal is always blaming, sorry, why India is always blaming Nepal and claiming the Nepali land?
Sorry, this question for me
Yeah, it's to you.
or for Ambassador Fabrice? No, if you don't mind, just repeat it. I missed the question. There was some problem with the sound. Could you just repeat that question?
Yeah, I can repeat for you. Many people in Nepal believe that Nepal is treated by India as she herself was treated by then British. Is there any realization to Indian political and diplomatic level that Nepal is not a country which was created by British Parliament? Why India is always blaming Nepal and claiming Nepali land? This is a question. You can escape either if you.
No. I would like to assure the questioner that there is no such confusion in any Indian mind that Nepal is a totally sovereign, independent country and should be treated as such. But there are some hang-ups from, there's a legacy of the British Indian past, as I said, which has not completely gone away. And there'll always be a few odd people in India or in any other country who, have to be educated a little bit about what Nepal is and treat Nepal with the kind of respect and awareness and respect for its insecurities that it deserves. There should be no confusion in anyone's mind that Indian politicians or diplomats want to treat Nepal in any other way than as a totally sovereign independent country.
Oh, thank you. Ambassador Rajan, this is another question to you. Do you think there is any role to the experienced diplomat like you to play some key roles to bring back the relationship between Nepal and India to the normal track? Can you do anything?
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Nepal is very much in my thoughts and prayers, even after I left it nearly 20 years ago. I've always done whatever little I could in any capacity. I have think tank activities, NGO activities, business-related activities. For example, as I mentioned earlier, I'm chairman of the India-Nepal Center in one of its apex chambers of commerce. The whole idea is to keep doing whatever we can at the non-government level to promote understanding and strengthen relations between the two countries. And we have many friends and partners in Nepal across the spectrum of activity who are helping us in this endeavor. But, once you retire from government, you get a certain freedom which you don't want to give up very easily. So I like to be a free person deciding what I want to do in terms of Nepal-related issues, and I'm trying my best to do it. But those 5.5 years that I spent in Nepal have not been wasted. I assure you, even as a retired diplomat, I'm very much active in promoting India-Nepal relations. And they have a glorious future, I've no doubt in that.
Thank you, Ambassador Rajan. And maybe this is a last question to you to this webinar. And there are two more questions to Ambassador Upadhyay, and then after we will wrap up the session. Ambassador Rajan, what do you think? What is preventing Prime Minister Modi to recognize and receive the report prepared by the Joint Committee of EPG? Did you get
the EPG report?
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah, that is.
Shall I report you? Shall I?
The question is, what is preventing Mr. Modi from receiving or recognizing the eminent persons group report?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the question?
Yeah, this is.
Yeah. No, I'm frankly a bit puzzled because the eminent persons group was set up by the two prime ministers, if I remember right, by Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Dubak some years ago. And this is a group which is supposed to make recommendations to the two governments on the basis of its own consensus. There is nothing, I think, which says that the recommendations have to be accepted. So I'm not able to understand why it is not being received. The stories that I read in the newspapers is that it is India which is reluctant to receive the EPG report. If that is so, frankly, I'm not able to understand the rationale for this, because it shows a certain sense of insecurity on the part of any government if it does not want to receive a report which it itself has commissioned. This is something which I'm not able to understand. But I think one of these days we will all understand why this is happening. Thank you.
Now we will go to Mr. Upadhyay with two questions. We have only 5 minutes, so please brief. Sorry. Yes. As an ambassador of Nepal, what proactive role you have played to break current deadlock in relation between Nepal and India? Are you now satisfied with the role of government of Nepal and the mission in New Delhi from Nepal side? Please be brief.
Thank you for this question. Anyway, we have to break and resolve this, I think, no other way but that. You see, our mission office, it should be fully backed by our ministry and fully inspired by the leadership. Then only any ambassador can do any role there. And in the policy level of the government of India, they must be graceful to make the access in this kind of, I think, juncture, because due to this COVID-19 crisis, there is no way to go along through and make some kind of a personal visits. That's why the only way the voice, both in Delhi and Kathmandu, they have to play their role and try to unfasten the present law. This is the first thing. And the second thing, again, I have to say, there is a will, there is a way. But will is from the political side. And regarding the relationship between the two primes, between Prime Minister Oli and Prime Minister Modi, I was so inspired because before Prime Minister Oli came to the power, then Sushma-ji came here and gave the congratulations from the Prime Minister Modi, and we see it's such kind of, I think, the relationship was very, in such a, I think, graph was such a great height, was very inspired. At the time when I was in Delhi, especially the policy level people used to ask me, what is the aspiration of Nepal from India? And I also try to get some reciprocal insights from them also. And I advised, now after this PA election, then there will be a government which we especially expect a strong government The good for Nepal, Prime Minister Modi, for the second time, has come to the power with a big, I think, the capacity. Good time. It is a good time for both the nations. We shouldn't miss the time. Time is the only estimating factor. That's why I'd like to make this comment from my humble heart. Time will wait for nobody. It's a good time for both the countries. Otherwise, we miss the time. The relationship between the two governments, sometimes between the two, I think the people also may come up and down, but the relationship between the two countries is unique. I think realize it and go for that. This is the only way I would like to make my submission for this question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir. This is the last question to you. Despite giving high priority to immediate neighbor India by government of Nepal, it seems that Nepali diplomats in New Delhi are being ignored by Indian side, even in the crucial juncture of the bilateral relations. Do you think that the government of India is ignoring the Nepali mission at its lowest, comparing to the before missions and year one tenure? So this is the question. This is the last one.
Yeah. The relationship is unique. That's why always the priority between the two countries must be in the same way. Especially the system in India, especially this Minister for External Affairs, is so strong without dividing of that. And in Nepal, just we are in the process to make our foreign ministry more stronger and progressive, very clear in the policy, especially in our foreign policy and our security policy also, and the code of conduct, type of our internal ethical, moral values that is under consideration. In India, it's not like this, and it is very good. Now I don't know what is the status now. When I was in Delhi till that time, Prime Minister Modi personally used to take the matter related to Nepal. Personally, Prime Minister Modi, his foreign minister, his security advisor, and his envoy in Kathmandu. These are the only 4 people which he again and again personally advised me, go and tell to all the leaders not to take an account any words, any kind of ideas from any other personality, because India is very big. That's the first point I would like to make clear. That's why. Now, what is the problem? There is a very, very good rapport with our highest level in our policy level, especially our Right Honorable President Sahiba, Vijay Bhandari ji, our Prime Minister, and many other people. They're in direct context. So it is, I think, a very, very, I think it is very, I think I am not so much clear why this kind of a low pace of, I think, the diplomatic action, there is no reaction. Nepal wants some kind of a dialogue, and government of India is unwilling. This is a very, very, I think, a serious one. That's what it should be. Now, come to the if we just make this mistake to go for the dialogue, everything again will come to the same pace. I hope Prime Minister Modi will never should forget his gesture. He made his policy level diplomatic relations on when he was the first time in power. When he, second time, now he's again in power. Now his height has naturally, I think it is on the tremendous height. That's why Nepal also should utilize President Nehru, Prime Minister Modi, and Prime Minister Modi also utilize the tenure of the government of here, because previously, before in Nepal, there were many, many governments changing all the time. There is no, I think, practical type of a permanent government system also. were pioneers just to changing the constitution, changing the government, changing the systems, etc. etc. Now it is not like that. Now Nepal in its, I think, a very good form. And among the Nepali, all the political parties in the parliament, outside the parliament, Nepal has a tremendous unity regarding this, I think, the national interest, national issues. That's why the government of India, especially Prime Minister Modi, should understand it and try to acknowledge the aspiration of the Nepali people. And always, I know he wants a better relations, better, I think, the upliftment of the Nepali people. That's why now he has to speak, he has to come ahead with his, I think, the own kind of a willingness. I think the self-will should prevail it. Otherwise, the traditional, especially you mentioned about the Nehru era, the Patel era, now it is the Modi era. Modi ji possibly should look it, should intervene it, and try to make a new good gesture from his side also. Thank you.
All right. All right. Now we are at the end of the session. Thank you, speakers. At the last, but not the least, I would like to request Ambassador Mr. Rajan, do you have any additional concluding remarks, sir? If you have, you can add here.
Well, I would just like to say that there are many precious components in the India-Nepal relationship, and we should not take a pessimistic view of the future simply because there is a complication which is facing us right now, which seems to be a very daunting one. I think the two countries are both very resilient. They are very, very close to each other. And what it needs is an innovative way of tackling the border issue in particular, which I know is uppermost in the minds of all Nepalese. And there are more difficult border issues which have been settled by India with other countries like Bangladesh involving territory, etc. So I think we should now lower the temperature on both sides. Let there not be any accusations to and fro. Let the two sides exchange in great detail at different levels all the evidence that they possess. Let them not dismiss each other's point of view, but take it very seriously. Let them give it a lot of urgency, because the longer this problem festers, the greater damage it will do to the relationship. And let us not forget that when you discuss a border dispute, there are three possibilities only. Either India is in the right as far as evidence is concerned, or Nepal is in the right as far as evidence is concerned, or both sides might have some evidence which favors their point of view. So for each category, there is actually an easy solution. So it is not as if this problem does not have a solution. Given the will, political will, and the goodwill, and the awareness that we must solve the problem, we should not let it dictate to us as to what the relationship what should happen to the relationship. I am a great optimist, and I have no doubt that the relationship has a great future. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ambassador Mr. Rajan. Mr. Ambassador Upadhyay, do you have any concluding remarks regarding the topic?
Not more, just I would like to thank you, your institution, and all the participants, especially my friend Mr. Rajan, for his, I think, very, very innovative remarks and good ideas. And it is the pride of both the nations and the people of both the countries. We have to, I think, harness this unique relation, and any kind of again dilemma, it will damage both the country, especially the aspiration of the Prime Minister Modi and the aspiration of the Prime Minister to make this country, without the help of the, I think, government of India, Fresh Nepal, Complete Nepali, Sukhi Nepali, can't be done, because we are bound by the geography, bound by the, I think, natural boundary. That's why these are the very, very natural phenomenon And we have to acknowledge all these things and forget just as a bad trip, I think the old hiccup, and just to make a fresh, I think, start, just trying to get early receiving of EPG report from Prime Minister Modi, making an arrangement for the bilateral dialogues, addressing, I think, boundary disputes and other disputes also. This is the only way. And I hope, and I think, very much confident, because I'm just watching the remarks from the policy people in India, that the relationship with Nepal is not, I think, as per relations as other countries. It is a special one. It is, I think, a very, very, I think, one family type of relation. That's why will be very much, I think, friendly, cordial, because Mr. Rajan just mentioned about the dispute, boundary dispute with Bangladesh, and government of India with a very great heart was solved. In the same way, the dispute of Nepal, that I think is such a big deal. When we did the dialogue and took across all the groups, then I think the way we can find. This is the thing I would like to.
Thank you so much, Mr. Upadhyaya and Ambassador Mr. Rajan, for your in-depth, innovative, prolific, and comprehensive ideas you just delivered with us. It is indeed an honor to us that you two distinguished and eminent official diplomat talk to us, and we thank you all the participants who are joining us with us, joining the webinar with us today. And now, without further delay, I would like to request our chair of the session, chairman of the institution, Dr. Rishiraj Adhikari, for the conclusion, for the conclusion of this webinar, and to provide vote of thanks. Chairman Dr. Adhikari.
Thank you, Yuvrajji. Namaste, everybody. Speaker, I'm Mr. K.P. Rajan, and Mr. Deep Kumar Upadhyaya. Other distinguished persons with interest and expertise in foreign policy, geopolitics, and India-Nepal relations. Friends from media, my colleagues at NIIR, a very good evening. I'm thankful to Mr. K.V. Rajan for his contribution in various issues on Nepal-India relations, not to be judgmental, what take home point he said. I appreciate him for that. We have to be a little bit more mature and treat every one of us in equal footing without hurting the sentiments of our friends. I thank Mr. Deepkumar Upadhyaya for taking his time out and contributing his views on this important webinar. Both of them deserve our appreciation for sharing their reflections on India-Nepal relations, especially at this juncture when we must find ways and means to enhance our relationship. There can be no second thought about it. I'm delighted and thankful to all of the participants for your active participation and contribution in the preceding deliberation. Extensive exercise has been carried out and views have been shared, and much has been discussed this afternoon on various facets of Nepal-India relations. On the outset, I would like to mention that Nepal and India enjoyed excellent bilateral ties, founded on the age-old connection of history, culture, social, traditional, religious, and economy. Many of us talk of unique relationship as we to have. It is because our borders are open, which is uncommon elsewhere. We swear not to let our territories misused by any inimical forces to any of us. We respect each other's unwavering commitment to the principles of peaceful coexistence, sovereign equality, and territorial integrity. Our youth have been providing security at Indian borders, ensuring their protections from outside forces. India is our top trading partner. Though we have unprecedented trade deficit with her, we do contribute a lot in their economy, though, through remittances. Nepalese people believe not at the behest of any third country. I would like to stress that we don't India being the closest country that they should be in a better situation to know us and have understanding of our national image, psychology of being proud, brave people who would better die than tell a lie to a friend. Nepali people think the encroachment started right after the Sino-Indian border war of November 1962. After facing difficulties at war, the Indian Army set up a camp inside Nepali claimed territory at Kalapani to monitor Chinese activities. But the Indian troops never left and now claim that the area belongs to them. However, Nepali reports claim that maps from 1850 and 1856 prepared the survey of India with the participation of Nepali authorities clearly state that Magali River declared as the border in the 1816 Sugoli Treaty as the border Sugoli Treaty originates from Limpia Dhura, 16 kilometers northwest of Kalapani, proving that Kalapani belongs to Nepal. But India refuses to accept those maps as proof. They say that an Indian map from 1875 should be considered instead, which shows the Magali's origin to the east of Kalapani. Notably, 1875 map does not have Nepal's certification. Now, being a big country, the onus lies with India to satisfy a smaller country like Nepal. That will be the end of a major irritant between our two countries. Once again, I thank you all. We will meet soon. I request for your support in NIIR's endeavors. I hereby declare this webinar closed. We'll see you again. Thank you very much.
नमस्कार नमस्ते थ्याङ्क यू सबैजनालाई धेरै धन्यवाद एम्बेसडर राजन दिप कुमार सर एन्ड एभ्रीबडी जो आउनुभयो धेरै धन्यवाद